You're listening to the Fezcast, produced on behalf of the Saracen Supporters Association and featuring the independent thoughts, rants and rambles of Saracens fans and special guests. If you'd like your opinion to be heard on the show, you can find the Fezcast on Facebook or Fezcast_SSA on Instagram and whatever Twitter is known as these days. But for now, enjoy this week's show.
You're listening to the Fezcast.
Well, hello everybody and welcome to another edition of the Fezcast. Joining me tonight after, not a great weekend really, I suppose. Wasn't great for me because I only seen the highlights, as they were, because our internet went down at home over the weekend, so I couldn't get my TNT Sport up. But yeah, away in Bordeaux, wasn't great, was it, Duncan? Last week we said what we wanted to see was an improvement on the group stage match and a bit more of, not expecting to win perhaps, but giving them a bit more of a fight. First half, it seemed like, it was well up until the last 5 minutes that they scored, wasn't it, Duncan? But it just didn't really click again.
Well, it felt like during the whole match, we were much more sort of up for it. And a lot of the defence was good. And especially at the end when the new legs came on, it was much better. We scored a try, but you never really know whether that's Bordeaux taking the foot off the gas. The thing is, that first half was so strange. I mean, how many times do you see 5 disallowed tries? Yeah. I think they were all correctly disallowed, except that you won't see a team of the quality of Bordeaux, chucking a forward pass at the wrong time or something like that, or it just bouncing a ball when, another time it might have been grounded. So, we could have been, what's 5 sevens? It's 35, isn't it? We could have been 35 down at half time, a bit like the first game. So it looked like, we were putting in a better defence and a better show of it. I'm not sure we did.
No, he's one of those things, we said the week before when we played Northampton that a lot of our mistakes came from the pressure that Northampton put on us in defence, and you'd hope that would be the same situation this week. But clearly, from what you're saying, it's more Bordeaux not really being accurate themselves and making the mistakes as opposed to us forcing the mistakes.
I think that's right. I've been thinking about it and thinking about the wider implications, and we'll know much, much more after next week, after Harlequins have to go to Bordeaux and Exeter have to go to Toulouse, and we'll see whether, they are completely thrashed like we were. But if you remember back a few years ago in our naughty era, we were the only team that could really compete in Europe, and everybody else was pretty useless. And we still had, it was still a fantastic achievement because our budget wasn't as high as Leinster or some of the French teams, but it was high enough to compete. And now it's probably not high enough to compete with those teams. And at the same time, if you look at football, the highest quality of football is not the World Cup. It's the knockout stages of the Champions League.
Yeah.
Because the Bayern Munichs, the Barcelonas, the Manchester Cities, they're all multinational superstar clubs. And I have a feeling that the top 6 of the top 14, and it's rather frightening that Bordeaux are 6th. In other words, almost halfway up the league. They're not even by a long way the best team in that league. But nevertheless, the top 6 are the same kind of things. That they're chock full of not just the best French, who are particularly good at the moment, and Bordeaux have got a lot of good Frenchmen, but Fijians and South Africans. Everybody is playing in the top 14, and I have a feeling that Toulouse or Bordeaux or La Rochelle could really give South Africa a really good run for their money, if not beat them.
Well, absolutely is what we used to say, as you say, when Saracens were up there pumping their naughty period, that we could always, put out a team that would frighten New Zealand or
Yeah.
South Africa at the time. And I think that's the key thing. And you mentioned the amount of, quality French, but also, for want of a better word, Galacticos in the top 14 in France. Of course, you've got an awful lot of quality English players. And indeed, Owen Farrell's going to France. If the rumours are true, Billy's off to Montpellier. I'm sure that might come out at some point, whatever. There's an awful lot of players taking the Euro, opening up the French checkbooks and going over there. And I mean, it does kind of make a mockery of the competition, doesn't it, really, at the end of the day? Because...
Well, yes and no. Yes and no. There are, I think there are two schools of thought. There are those who say, "Oh, scrap the salary cap." I'm still in favour of the salary cap. I think we have to grow the game in this country. We have to make it more popular and therefore more richer. Spread it geographically so that it's more valuable to BT or whoever picks up the TV rights. And if you scrap the salary cap, I don't think there are enough really, really rich people out there to get more than 2, possibly 3 teams who win everything. And is that the best thing for the Premiership compared to the amazing competition we've got this season, where every week you don't know what's going to happen? You see some really good rugby and you don't know what's going to happen in it. Now, it means that when we get to Europe, we're probably not competitive with the top 5 or 6 teams who are always in there at the later stages. La Rochelle, Leinster, blah, blah, blah. But it's the way to grow excitement in the Premiership and have the best competition that we can.
But is the best competition necessarily the best quality? And I understand what you're saying, Duncan, but also by the same definition, if you've got teams that can beat each other week in, week out, but you've got players of the likes of, Jack Willis is over in France now, Courtney Laws is going to France, Owen Farrell's going to France. These players that are all going to France, Jack Noel, there's a dearth of English talent because they're off to France. So actually, although it's competitive and it's wonderful to watch and anybody can beat anybody, is it the best rugby that we can possibly watch?
My belief, and that it's all belief and conjecture, isn't it, that you won't get a top quality competition if you've got all of those players, instead of playing in France, concentrated in 2 or 3 teams that happen to have the rich enough sugar daddies. So if instead of having Newcastle, who are way below everyone else's standard, every week we're just beating teams who are not as good as we are.
Yeah, I suppose the ultimate step in the other direction is to turn around and say, is club rugby in England viable? And perhaps you're looking at 4 divisions: North, Southwest, Southeast, and Midlands. As a potential. I mean, that's opening up a Pandora's box of all sorts of stuff, isn't it? But I mean, is that the way? So, if you go to Ireland, they've got 4 provinces that are fed in by a number of clubs that are perhaps playing at a lower level, but your likes of your Joey Carberries and your Bundy Keys and whatever just play provinces rugby, and every now and then, if they need a run out, they play for their club side.
Well, those who follow the message board, the Saracens message boards, will know that I can get very, very boring on this subject. And, and I don't think that anything meaningful is going to happen very quickly when you've got the people who own the teams running the competition. Because it's like turkeys voting for Christmas. There needs to be a plan for geographic expansion. There needs to be a supporting of teams coming up and a reorganization of the competition. And I don't think you make the competition stronger by having clubs that are more than an hour away from their fan base, because fans don't generally travel more than an hour. So a good geographic spread with everybody having access to top quality competition. We've got enough players in the UK, but the game has got to grow so that we can have an even better competition. And get to the stage where it's being run in the way that the French league is run, in that everybody has to submit their budget before the season starts to show that they can survive the season. We'll never have the level of local subsidy. Northampton Council is never going to give Northampton Rugby Club millions of euros each year, but nevertheless, there's got to be a way of getting into that virtuous circle so that the game grows, the TV income becomes greater, and so on. That's the way forward.
Absolutely. And I suppose the other thing with France that we don't have in England is that rugby union in France is very much a bigger game almost than football. Football's not got the same level of support necessarily as you do over here, as could be seen by the fact that it's probably cheaper for you to go and watch Paris Saint-Germain in the football or Lille in the football than it is to go and watch West Ham play, for instance.
It's got a lot of similarities. If you look at, all of those World Cup stadia in France were football stadia. So you've got, 60,000 seats in Lille Football Club, 60,000 seats in Lyon Football Club, which is a lot bigger than the rugby club. But like here, the football clubs outside of Paris, outside of Lyon, tend to be in towns that are the equivalent of Northampton and Bath. The team that I follow, Perpignan, is in a town of 150,000 people, where it is massive news. It sells out 15,000 every game and could sell out 20,000. Toulouse is a big, rich town, but they tend to be. Clermont is not a massive town. So there are similarities with how it is here.
Yeah, absolutely. Look, I think we've done that one. We managed to gloss over the game. We seem to make a habit of this, don't we, Duncan, really? But let's have a quick break there, and then we're going to come back and talk about a couple of talking points. One, following on from the Six Nations, but also we want to have a quick chat about some of the signings that Saracens made for next season, which is quite exciting.
Hi, this is Petrus Duplessis, and you are listening to the Fezcast.
This is the Fezcast.
Well, in typical Saracens fashion, me and Duncan recorded on Monday evening before the news came out about another new signing. So Matt's joined me in luckily this time, not like last time when I did it sat in my van with a pair of buds on from the mobile phone. At least the quality should be a little bit better. It's not like man in a bucket. But Matt, yeah, we've
still caught on the fly. It's a good thing we're recording from the waist upwards, because I am literally just home from work and half dressed. So we slot these recordings in where we can, don't we?
yeah. Luckily for you, I get dressed for work, so there we go. I've just finished, but yeah,
sorry.
Yeah. For that picture that is now in everybody's mind, we'll try and take your mind off of it by thinking about following on from two young standoff signing last week. A young centre is joining the club, former Wasp, currently down in Australia at Western Force, but Sam Spink's coming to North London and, joining Louis Johnson and Fergus Burke. It's great, isn't it? This is a lot of young talent coming in. Young rugby players coming in. Now, there's a number of reasons why that would be, isn't it, Matt? Probably mainly is because actually, taking Owen Farrell's wage off the bill, as it were, out of the salary cap, does free up space for two or three players, which is clearly what we've got. Younger players are not going to have that premium that an Owen Farrell or a Billy Vunipola or a Maro Itoje or whatever take. But yeah, it's impressive, isn't it? Yep. We said to Duncan, I don't know whether you're going to include what I said to Duncan and how you're going to edit this in, and you're going to have that fun tonight. But the interesting thing is, it's very reminiscent of when Brendan Ventnor came into the club, isn't it? In so much as that, I'm not saying back then in 2008-09, when they got rid of the long knives, as it were, and they got rid of a lot of dead wood. I'm not saying that the players at the club are dead wood, but certainly there's an element of some older players they moved on and looking at a long-term plan to rebuild again.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's not a revolution like that was. It's not the huge turnover that we've seen at Saracens in the past. It's probably not evolution. I was going to say that, but it is, like you say, it's more players are moving on. They're getting a bit older, and it's a changing of the guard. And like you say, with Owen Farrell disappearing from the wage bill, and we presume some other players as well who have commanded a big wage in the past and in the last few seasons as well. We are moving some players on, and I think in certain positions we've seen that, not that we're over reliant on certain players, but that the cupboard is a little bit bare sometimes. And I think you look at Nick Tompkins this season. At times he's looked absolutely exhausted, and he's been the main man at 12. Obviously, Ollie Hartley's come in and done brilliantly for someone who's barely 20, 21, I think, isn't he? And Sam Spink, a little bit older, coming in at 24, is another player who can fill that number 12 shirt. And it does just give you some options for a little bit of rotation and a little bit of keeping players fresh, but not dropping too much in quality. And you're exactly right. The players that we're bringing in, all fairly young, got plenty of years ahead of them, and it is just building that squad up that little bit further. We're not going to be reliant on single players in positions. There's a few people already sort of saying, "Oh, well, how are we going to fit all these players in the team?" Like, well, it's a long season. You list out the options that we've got at centre now going into next season. At the moment, there's 2 or 3 of them that I think actually would be more likely to find themselves on the wing or at fullback as their sort of primary position. And you've got the likes of Tompkins, Spink, Hartley, Alex Lazowski as well. 4 players for 2 positions there, yeah. Sinti's one that I can see on the wing quite a lot. We've not brought any wingers in yet. We've got some good young players who are doing very well at Ampthill that I think we'll see a little bit more of next season. But yeah, Sinti's one that I think might pop up on the wing. And yeah, I do like the way our squad's building. We're obviously going to see some departures soon as well, but yeah, be interesting.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think I had a look at it in briefly, and if you think that perhaps Theo Dan's going to play more often starting than perhaps Jamie George will next season, potentially, although Jamie may well be, your de facto captain, him and Murrow. But if you think you're looking at Nick Tompkins is still only in his 20s, I think. He's not yet 30. Alex Lazowski's 31 next year. But then you could pick a team that's going to be, Ronnie Marwee's going to be an experienced player, but he's not yet 30. Theo Dan, Marco Riccioni, Hugh Tizard, Nick Azigui, Maro Itoji, Juan Martin Gonzalez, Ben Earl, Andy Christie. I mean, the youth, but they're good youth. I mean, it's not like, we're chucking kids in. These are lads who've been blooded, who are becoming internationals. And indeed, Sam Spink is coming back to London because he's got, obviously, international ambitions, and it's the right place to be. And Ollie's performance as a Western Force, I've had a look. That's obviously somebody somewhere's had a conversation, said, we'd like you back in England because we think you could do a job in a white shirt.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, when Ollie Hartley came in and we saw a bit of him in the Prem Cup and then in the league as well, we sort of looked at him and went, this is Ollie's the sort of closest thing to Brad Barrett we've had since Brad Barrett as a physical dynamic centre. And feeling slightly sorry for him in a way that Sam Spink is coming in a couple of years older, a couple of years more experienced with a bit of time in Australia as, again, a very sort of Brad Barrett style abrasive centre. And it's obviously something that we're looking to do a fair bit more. And between Tompkins, Spink and Hartley, there's 3 very, very good options at 12 before you even look at anyone else. And yeah, the fact that Sam Spink is even available is obviously because the pest from up the road went a bit wrong. And credit to Spink, who's gone off to Australia and done something different, and is now looking to come back. But yeah, he's going to come back with a very good experience playing for a Western Force team, which is pretty much the worst in the league, but he is a shining light within that team. He's been player of the season last year, I think it was, and he's looking pretty good this year as well. So, yeah, definitely like it.
Absolutely. Well, as my dad always says, in Mark McCall we trust. I just get the idea maybe that Mark's looking at this as his next and perhaps last opportunity to build a dynasty, as it were, and take these lads through. Again, we're talking about it a lot. Perhaps we need to temper our expectation for these lads for next season, in so much as, are they going to be at the top of the league? Potentially not. But then again, and Sam's been saying this about Exeter Chiefs. A bunch of kids there. Are they going to do well? And they've done well. Northampton exactly the same. Maybe they're a year or so ahead of us in that development. But yeah, I think good, young, hungry, well-coached players will always rise to the top and go well.
I think, we've spoken a few times on this show already this season, and perhaps doing so in the wake of the big loss to Bordeaux is one thing as well. But certain people within our fan base that we do see being a little bit vocal sometimes on the internet and in various places do need to get over some of their sense of entitlement that we're going to bring in the world's best players and finish top of the league every season. It is what it is. We're seeing the league squeeze together a little bit. And yes, Saints are probably having the best season out of any side, but they've still lost 4 or 5 games or whatever it is out of 15 or so. And we want it to continue the way it is, where any team can beat any team. You're going to lose almost as many games as you win and finish in the top 4. So, yeah, not everyone that comes in is going to be an international superstar. There's a few people already trying to find out where our international wingers are coming from, and maybe actually we should be looking from within the squad as well. But yeah, the development, as you say, that Mark McCall's bringing in, it's not bringing in a team of Galacticos, because we've tried that before and it actually doesn't work. So,
Yeah. And let's be honest about it, those same people probably said the same thing when they were looking at the likes of, Owen Farrell and George Cruz and Maro Itoje and Maku Vunipola and Billy Vunipola when they came in at the start of Mark McCall's first dynasty. Well, yeah, no. Looking forward to it. Anyway, shall we get back to what me and Duncan were moaning on about and leave you to edit this all up?
Well, maybe. Are you actually going to talk about the game at all, or are you just going to whinge?
Well, we just whinged a bit, but hey,
fair enough. Enjoy the
entitled to every now and then, aren't we?
I'll leave you to it.
Then, yeah, back to me and Dunk.
You're listening to the Fezcast.
You are listening to the Fezcast, which is proudly sponsored by the Saracens Supporters Association, and I'm Alison Davis, one of the SSA committee. For a £10 annual subscription, the SSA provides our members with monthly newsletters, virtual and in-person player events, away match ticket allocations, and we organise pre-match gatherings at away matches. We sponsor men's and women's players, and we support the Saracens Foundation Track Club on behalf of our members. On top of all that, every year we have a seasonal SSA badge, which is exclusive to members. Where else can you get that much value for a tenner? Join now at membermojo.co.uk/SSA, or come and see us on match day in the Oasis at the Stonex.
This is the Fezcast.
Well, welcome back, everybody, to our second part. And joining me tonight, or today, or tomorrow, or this morning, whatever it is Duncan. And yeah, I mean, we've been slightly depressed about the state of rugby in England and indeed Saracens' performance in Europe. That's gone. Lads have got a week off now, obviously not playing any European rugby this weekend. And get ready for Gloucester at home, which, again, is another must-win game. But before we discuss all of that, it was announced this week, Six Nations Player of the Tournament, and Tommaso Menoncello got the plaudit. Yeah, I thought he had a really good tournament. I think he's a quality player, and I said when we reviewed the Six Nations that he would be one player that I would like to see in a Saracen shirt, because I think he'd fit in very nicely, particularly inside centre. But I think Ben Earl has got a case to say that perhaps he was slightly robbed of that award. Don't you think, Duncan?
Definitely. But I think it was in recognition of what's going on in Italy as a whole, which is such a good news story, isn't it?
Yeah.
And again, contrast Wales with Italy. You know, if the Welsh RFU can get it together to manage, you know, the proverbial drink in a brewery, they should be sending people to Italy to see what they've done.
Yeah.
Because as we've said before on the podcast, it's not just happening at the first team level; it's happening at the under-20 level as well. And something very, very good has been done in Italy. And I think that, yeah, like you, Ben Earl was the best player of the tournament, but I've got no objection with it going to any Italian you like, quite frankly, because it was very, very good news, their performance.
Indeed, and I think most of the world would agree with you that either Ben Earl or any Italian would deserve it. Unless, of course, you're Irish and they're all up in arms because Bundy Aki never got it. But, I mean, as I pointed out, he had a great tournament. He was a great player. Against Scotland, he wasn't particularly great. And against England, he went complete way. He didn't go missing. He just kept on running down blind alley after blind alley. And I think when you look at consistency across the tournament, I don't think Ben, even in the games that England lost, the two games that we lost against Scotland and against France, I don't think he was by any means lost in those games whatsoever. He still performed at a really high level. And also against Italy, where England were frankly not brilliant, him and Ethan Roots were two of the better players who kept England in that game. So, yeah, for a sheer consistency, I think we can safely say that Ben, he was the one English player who got into the Six Nations team of the tournament, as decided by the Irish, it seems.
Ronan O'Gara, was it?
Yeah, I think so. Ronan O'Gara and Johnny Sexton managed to.
He's been at it again this week, Ronan O'Gara. Did you see? He's having a go. He's previously had a go at English and Saracens. He's now having a go at women by saying they know nothing about rugby and they shouldn't even bother to busy their pretty little heads about it because they'll never understand it.
Well, you know, there are certain people that in this world. I think it was Ronan O'Gara, wasn't it, who Duncan McRae took 7 lumps out of on a British Lions tour, didn't he? I think he's probably still recovering from that smacking he got from Duncan.
Well, something's knocked him sideways. It's yeah.
It's
I'd
crazy.
stop digging if I was him, but then maybe he can't stop.
No, absolutely not. As not. Well, let's talk about some good news, Duncan, because and I think it is good news. 2 new signings announced last week at standoff to come in for Owen Farrell, and presumably, I'm guessing, perhaps Manu Vunipola is off on his off out the door, maybe. But Fergus Burke coming over from New Zealand, where he's been Richie Mwanga's understudy for a little while, and Louis Johnson from Newcastle coming down. I mean, 2 young, exciting players. Both players who can play in more than one position. I know Louis has played fullback as well. Knowing when to allow players to move on is a big, big trick, isn't it? The average age of the team that starts next year could be somewhere around about 24, 25 of young, hungry, talented players.
Yeah, we've seen maybe Northampton and Exeter a bit ahead of us. I'm very excited about it as well, as I am about the Premiership. I'm not depressed about the Premiership at all. I find it an exciting competition. And this phase that we're going into, is exciting as well. I expect we'll lose quite a few games because there's a bit of maturity to develop in that team. And it's great to see, cover coming in at 10. We were all assuming that it was going to be Alex Lazowski, and I think we'd be the stronger for him carrying on at centre and having 2 number 10s. By the way, when Manu Vunipola came on, as I said before, it's hard to know if Bordeaux's foot was off the gas. We were much, much better in that game. And I don't want to say, it was Alex Good's fault. It wasn't. But and Owen Farrell didn't have the happiest of nights against Bordeaux either, but it was a big factor that. I don't think Alex Good at number 10 is the answer to a maiden's prayer at the moment. And it would have been interesting to see Manu Vunipola start. But nevertheless, having 2 young 10s coming in given that we have a need in that position, is very exciting.
Indeed. And I mean, that does bring us now on to the situation coming up. As I said, we talked about the fact that coming up is the Gloucester game a week on Saturday. Excuse me. Owen Farrell's out for a little while with a hamstring injury. Hopefully it's not too serious and that we do see him before the end of the season. Andy Christie's out for the rest of the season, though, having broken his arm again, which is a little bit disconcerting. I mean, it's very similar to like Billy Vanapola when he seems to, get his arm fixed and then break it, get his arm fixed and break it. I hope that's not going to be a recurring issue for Andy because he's had such a great season as well. But yeah, I mean, it's interesting to see what would you do against Gloucester, given Gloucester a little bit of resurgence as well themselves. I mean, is Alex Good the steadying hand on the tiller at 10 or do you risk Manu Vanapola there?
Well, personally, I put Manu in. He's had two good performances in the relatively short time that he's played recently. I would give him a go. I definitely would. But we shall see.
Yeah.
It's incredibly, it's really sad about Andy Christie. It's reminiscent of Theo McFarlane being Croc's last season when he was really playing well. And as you say, Billy was never the same player after breaking his arm the second time because it must affect you mentally. If you've gone in like that with your arm and broken it twice, it's got to affect you. And I just hope that Andy Christie is not affected in the same way.
Absolutely not. I mean, that's very important. We give our best wishes to both Owen and to Andy and all the other players who are coming back from injury. It's good to see the likes of Marco Riccioni back now. I mean, that's like getting a new player, isn't it? And when he gets up to speed, I think that's going to be important for us as well. Duncan, shall we just finish off with a quick one? Obviously, Women's Six Nations kicks back off again this weekend. So on Saturday, rugby to watch, Scotland versus England, the Calcutta Cup match for the women up at the Dam Stadium, I think it is, isn't it, and in Edinburgh. That's going to be a big, tough game. A week off to lick some wounds and to do some R&R. But yeah, Scotland have looked good this tournament, run France very close. We looked very good against Wales. This will be an interesting game, won't it?
It will do. Good to see it sold out, which is excellent news. I mean, we do look very, very good, and it's hard to see us losing that, I think.
Yeah, well, I think what Scotland will want is what myself and Joe discussed at the very start of the season is that they want to be seeing an increase in performance. So I think making England work hard for a victory. And you never know. You've always got a puncher's chance, haven't you? You just need a red card or a key injury or something like that, and it can turn in your favour. And these are the sort of things that if Scotland can hang on and be in the fight and show a little bit of dog, you never know what might happen.
We talked about improving the men's game here by concentrating the talent into fewer teams, and what we're seeing in the PWR is that all of the Six Nations are playing in it, aren't they? We've got this league that is, we've got a whole raft of Scottish and Welsh internationals in the Saracens team who are playing competition at a high level. And as you say, I hope it pulls up all of the international teams. A couple of points I'd like to make about Saturday. One thing that was really impressive was the Saracen support there. And I've got to get hats off to Nige Easton, David Loxham and all the guys at the SSA who do an amazing job. Everybody was sat in the same place and I know they got everybody a great deal. Amazing support. The other thing is something's got to be done about French TV directors. I mean, the Elliot Daly yellow card, they kept on showing it for about 2 or 3 minutes, it seems like, until eventually the referee had a look at it.
Yeah.
Now, it probably was a yellow card.
Yeah,
but they've got to do something about that.
Because obviously the one thing they won't do is as soon as it's a French player, the cameras are gone.
Exactly, that's exactly what they do.
Are out on strike.
You don't mind if it's even, but it's not even.
No, and I think you're absolutely right there. That's a big thing that needs to be sorted out prior to next season, and indeed the Six Nations, you said the Six Nations as well, that, you know, when we talked about the Stephen Lewis one for Harlequins on Owen Farrell, where he, you know, gave him that late when he said, oh, we can't look at that because Alston Healy said it. You know, we're being too even-handed almost, too fair, whereas the French have no problem with influencing in that way. You're absolutely right. Duncan, thank you for your time. Nice short show tonight, obviously, because to keep Matt happy, because or keep the people who pay the bills happy anyway. Thank you for your time, Duncan. And as I say, we'll be back next week on the 17th of April, I think it is. Looking forward to the Gloucester match. And hopefully next week I'll have some news about something that's coming up towards the end of the month as well. So something to look forward to there. But thanks for your time, Duncan. Thank you, everybody, for listening in. Hope you enjoyed the show, and we'll speak to you again next week.
This is the Fezcast.